to our fourth and final person that we are representing today. We have here today Helena, Lynch. Joleen is here on behalf of the Lynch family. So she's going to tell you a little bit about Helena, which she was a fascinating woman. This cemetery is here because of Helena.
That's all I had.
All right, you're done.
Hi everyone, I am Helena O'Rourke. I'm pleased to offer you shade this afternoon. I'm sorry I can't speak too loudly. A little known fact, apparently spirits can still get cold, and so I'm recovering from the cold, but I'm so thankful that you're all here to learn a little bit about me. I was born in Lincoln in March of 1922. I was born Helena Hazel Lynch. My parents were John Albert and Catherine Eva. They were born in St. Patrice, Quebec, and married in 1899, the day after Christmas. I'm one of 8 children. I'm the youngest. My father, John, was actually the first barber in Lincoln. A little bit about my other siblings, many are here. One brother was the chief of police in Lincoln and was known as the Law in town. My brother Charles, lived on what is now the Common Man property in Lincoln. Yes. And had many horses there. And in fact, my son would tell you that he recalls growing up where Charles and another one of my brothers would go and find the horses that had been used to do the logging for the mill. And many of them were very tired, very worn, worked to the bone. And my brother Charles was a big, dominating man. And so he would go up and pretty much tell someone, I am taking your horse and I am going to rehabilitate it. And no one would argue with him. And so he would bring them back until they were well enough again, and sometimes probably would just keep them if he didn't think they deserved to be returned. But they grew up on that property, or lived on that property. My brother Charles also drove the train into the woods for the mill. The train that is now at the end of the Loon Mountain Bridge was the one that he would drive back in the day. I had a sister who was over here, Gertrude. Sadly, she died at the age of 5. And another sister lived in town for the majority of her life, Libby. She was married to Captain Thomas Fox O'Brien, who was a decorated war veteran killed in action in World War II the day after his birthday, saving the lives of men in his unit. And you may know that just a few years ago, the town kindly named a pathway across from the house I grew up in, O'Brien Ave, in his honor. I graduated from Lincoln High School and I was a cook. I cooked up at Loon Mountain and at another restaurant. I also worked for the Lincoln Police Department as a dispatcher, and that's where eventually I retired from. I did marry into the O'Rourke family and had one son named Sean, who blessed me with 2 grandchildren later on. We didn't have much. Like many back then, it was not an easy time, but I really made do. I was very savvy and could make a little go a long way. My son would tell you he recalls that we really didn't have a heat source in our house, and so I would heat up a cast iron pan and put it under his blankets at night in the very cold of winter. We always got by. Personally, I could be a bit of a character. I had a dry, quick New Hampshire humor. I can't retell some of the jokes that my son told to my great niece Joleen because they're just simply not appropriate, but I had a very good sense of humor. I love to knit. This sweater I actually knit, and I left it to my great niece Joleen after I had passed away. I loved genealogy, which I'll get into that in just a moment, which is kind of really why I think I am here today. But I also really loved NASCAR, which might not be a well-known fact about me, but it was my thing. In fact, my son would wait. He was over in Colorado, so a few hours behind. He would wait till he knew a race was starting, and he would call me right then. And I would get madder than a hornet every time. And I was not a big lady, but I could make a lot of noise and get very mad at him. And he would even tell you that, sadly, as I got older, I had some health issues. I had 1 stroke, when I was having my second stroke, I knew I was, but the NASCAR race was on. And I was not going to the hospital until that was done. And so I waited until the end of the race, and then I went to the hospital. So I did love my NASCAR. Truly, though, I think that I made my mark as one of the keepers of Lincoln's past. Genealogy was very, very important to me. And I lived to 90. I had nearly a century of knowledge of all the people and places and, the stones and everything, the people that gave Lincoln its true soul. And I knew a lot about everyone. I know where everyone is here. I like to share stories, certainly, but I really love genealogy, and the cemetery was very important to me. And back a long time ago, the cemetery was not really cared for by the town. It was families that would have to take care of all the plots and everything. And so I probably badgered a bit until the town eventually took over this cemetery here today. And I, for 16 years, was the trustee of both Riverside and Hanson Farm Road cemeteries. I was very, very proud of that. I took the job seriously. We accomplished a lot with the trustees that we had, a lot of improvements, records, care. One thing that I probably was also fairly well known for was there was a gentleman known as Ike Watley who is presumed to have been buried on Pollard Road in Lincoln. And the American Legion had put a marker there for him. He was J.E. Henry's driver, and he was killed overseas during the war, and everyone had presumed that he had been returned here and that J.E. Henry had him buried on his property. Standing up, which I don't quite understand that, but that was what was said. While it was determined that that was not him eventually, at the time that was what we believed, and I thought it was really important that we had a marker, a more permanent one, to really remember him by, because as generations go on, we lose all these stories so quickly. So the town did kindly make one up. It's now here at Riverside. It was moved when they determined that was not Ike that was buried here, but we still remember him here as someone who was very important to the founding man of Lincoln. But most importantly, I made sure that everyone that is buried here, all of our friends and family, were respected and remembered. And I took great care of the cemetery. My nephew, John Lynch, took care of the cemetery after he retired and would mow the grass and take care of it. And he would tell you, I came here quite a bit and really pointed out all the things that he could do better. I don't think he minded. He might tell you otherwise. But it was really important to me that the cemetery looked as good as it could. And this is a beautiful resting place for myself and so many others. I did pass in November 2012 up at the Lafayette Center in Franconia. I was age 90. I lived a very long and wonderful life. I'm buried here with my family today, where I can keep an eye on things and make sure all the future people taking care of Riverside are taking the best care of it. So thank you for coming to learn a bit about me.